Yeah. I mean, I'm the one with access to it, but I don't feel like having to run in after and dig it out.
Okay. All right, so I'm recording. Who's our next billionaire we're going to talk about?
I mean, I'm curious as to where we left off with Carol, but that's kind of just lost audio, I guess.
He said he was recording.
What is happening? There we go. Okay. I think I probably lost about a minute before it cut off. So
anyway. All right. Well, we'll just pick
I'm sorry about that.
It's all good.
No one cares about Carol Ferris anyway. I'm gonna be honest, guys. Star Sapphire is garbage.
I'm trying to include women in this conversation.
I'm fine including women, but Carol Ferris is the least of them.
Well,
wow.
There's only one other one.
Wow. Yeah, as I say, like you got two women, like half of them suck. Like, wow, bold statement.
Power Girl's cool.
I feel like you should be on the Joe Rogan podcast, not this one.
Let me tell you why it's wrong to wear a mask, guys, real quick.
Listen up, Bropra.
Right.
That was good.
All right, well, then you get to pick next. Pick your next dude for this sausage fest.
All right, I'm going to pick one, Charles Xavier.
Oh, going swinging the big guns, huh?
Yeah. Now, on this list, Charles Xavier is listed as dead last, number 10 in the Marvel Universe. But it has recently come to light that Charles Xavier is actually the richest man in the Marvel Universe because he has a whole mess of shell corporations that allowed him to produce all the drugs that's making all the money for Krakoa. Krakoa being the island nation of all of the mutants. Charles Xavier is interesting because first and foremost, he comes from money. He's a telepath. Like, there is no reason he shouldn't have basically all of the money and everything he wants. And it seems like he's finally realized he can do that. Or whenever he goes bad, he realizes he can do that. But I do think it's interesting because he's basically used his resources to actually do something good for his people, let's say.
I'd like to note, though, actually, like the biggest time he went evil, spoilers for Onslaught in the 1990s, he actually didn't care about money at all. And it's interesting to compare that evil Onslaught, Professor X, was just like, no, I just I want power, but I don't need money. Like, he's not like, okay, how do I fund my enterprises? He's like, I'm just going to destroy people. Whereas, like, quote unquote benevolent Professor X is like, money. How we get the patents? He's a pharma bro now, right? So that's essentially he's
Yeah, it's 100%. Yeah.
Oh, well, Charles.
I think Charles learned from his inequities as Onslaught and from Magneto's constant failures that money goes further than vengeance and anger and murder. You can buy yourself out of a murder rap.
And they literally address this, and I think it's the new X-Men were on X-Men number 4. Magneto, Professor X, and Apocalypse go to like the World Money Forum or whatever. I forget what the actual meeting is called, but it is
World Money Forum.
It's not that, obviously, but it should be called the World Money Forum.
What is that thing called? Let me look that up.
Financial Summit. I don't remember.
It's a summit, but I forget what it's called.
It's called the Money Forum. That's what we need to call it now. That's the ticket.
Money Forum.
You want the monies? We got the monies. Come to the forum.
I mean, you're pretty good at the sales pitch there. That's not bad. But basically, they go and tell the other world leaders, we're literally going to use your playbook. We're going to dominate you financially, so we get to decide what the rules are in order to make the world better for ourselves and our people.
The G20.
I don't think it's the G20.
Is it the G8?
No.
It's pronounced D20. It's
Thank you.
Yeah. No.
And I think they used a D12. They had a two-handed sword.
The G20 is an international forum of governments and central bank governors from 19 countries in the European Union.
Then I guess it's probably that. I don't remember. They mentioned it in the comments. I don't remember what the actual government and rich person meeting it is that they go to.
I was going to say, because I feel like that was spot on.
I do know, like, Gorgon and Cyclops have to maim a whole bunch of people during it. So
Yeah, let's just call it. I mean, and also it was probably off-branded enough, so it's like the H21, so that they were like, we're legally distinct. Don't sue us.
We don't gotta deal with this. We're fine.
H21.
Actually, I think it may be the World Economic Summit. I think is actually what I'm thinking.
I feel like that's always used in movies as like, again, the like Hydrox version of the G20.
Yeah, it's fair.
I would say, is that like the Pan Global Games that was in the Power Rangers where Kimberly decided to leave? This is for the Pan Global Games.
You mean
Sorry, what now?
The prequel to the Hunger Games?
No, I find it very interesting what they are doing with Xavier's wealth and influence and overall power now, because instead of just being the traditional, I'm a billionaire, I'm going to go run around and make gadgets and fight crime, or I'm the evil billionaire, so I'm going to use my billions to fund criminal enterprises to rob banks, I guess, or steal technology, but I'm already a billionaire.
Money makes money, buddy.
Evidently.
You gotta steal money to make money.
I think this is going to come into the fundamental issue we have with billionaires and comics in general, is that it's sort of a weak plot device for any of this, because even though he has shell corporations, we're assuming amassed this wealth through different investment funds, different trading blocks, different things like that. Like, building the medicine that he would then sell back to the US seemed practically impossible without anybody, especially nowadays, without anybody finding out that this corporation was making anything. Like, I don't understand how you could make, like, essentially, like if you made a Pfizer vaccine, sort of, like, how does that get made in private to where you can then show up on the doorstep one day and say, I have the COVID-19 cure?
He has a magical sentient island that grows whatever he needs,
including food. Like, that's the thing too, is like, they're like, we're gonna get all this money, but then part of that too is like, for what? Like, you don't need food because you grow it on the island. You don't need shelter because it's the island again, that it's all magic and whatnot. I mean, and then you're also able to resurrect anyone who dies on the island. So it's like food, shelter, and health are all provided by this island, but you still went out and said, let's go get more money just to fuck with people. By the way, are we cursing on this podcast? I guess we're doing it now. So
yeah, no, well, and the other question then becomes, why did he feel the need to harbor safe passage for his people if he has this magical island that can't be found while he's creating these things? Like, he's basically saying, like, hey, we will have a ceasefire amongst mutants and humans if I give you these things, meaning that he feels vulnerable at some point, right?
Yeah, because he is vulnerable.
But can the island be found is my question.
Yes, the island can be found.
Yeah.
They just didn't know what was happening. It may be able to move and things like that, but it can be found. And he's doing it to amass the power necessary to insulate mutants. I mean, that's why they're doing all this. That's why they're all doing this, is they're literally doing it so that what has happened to mutants throughout Marvel Comics publication history can't happen again.
Yeah, but that's the other thing I was trying to, again, as I said, it's a weak plot device, which, again, I admire the fact that they're actually using, cognitively building in finances as being a thing that happens in this world. But I'm like, there are two things, in both comics and in real world that make anything move, and it's money and the threat of force and violence. So if the island can be found, why not just blow him out of the water and take whatever you need from him?
I think that is eventually the plan, but that is also why they're amassing as much power as they possibly can to make that as impossible as it can be. Keep in mind also, it's an island full of super powered individuals, many of them at the Omega level. Like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna shoot metal bombs at Magneto?
Well, I mean, yeah, theoretically speaking, it's dumb, but it's also the best target you could ever hope for if your plan is to get rid of all of them at once. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's dumb to shoot a nuclear weapon at him because he can tear it apart, but it's also brilliant if it works.
You only need one to work, and then you're like,
because again, Magneto's not hanging out in Afghanistan while Xavier's in Washington D.C. and you have to try and coordinate an attack on both of them. They're both literally in Washington D.C. Blow them both up.
True, but also with the island, you do also have instantaneous teleportation.
Yeah.
So they are able to like, oh, it's targeted. We're already over there. Like we're already on another area. So it's. I mean, it's.
And
th-
that,
yeah.
oh, sorry, I was going to say, that is also the threat that they pose. They can be anywhere in an instant. If you target them, they're just going to appear on your doorstep and target you back.
Well, see, and this goes back to my point, which is about the billionaire thing and how money is always a weak cudgel in comics, regardless of how much it is, because we've jumped the shark from him amassing all this money and organizing all of these things to, I have an island that can attack you, or I can attack you from the island. It no longer becomes about the money. It's just his island. And he's using the money to kind of correlate with, the real world. Like, oh, these are what people in the real world would do. They would buy, they would sell and traverse in finances and vaccines versus having an island that can magically do shit for them. Because at the point, you don't really need the money. You can just gather everyone on the island and say, leave us the fuck alone, and you come after us, we're just gonna keep disappearing.
I mean, that's the thing of power, though. It's just a matter of who's perceived to have power versus actually having the power. They have the power, but they're not perceived as having it. So by backing it with money, that's a language that their threats understand. Like, oh, we can't attack them because they could kill us and they could bankrupt us. So I don't want to be bankrupt. You can kill me, but just don't bankrupt me. Fuck, for heaven's sakes. I mean,
exactly.
That's I think there's probably look at Pablo Escobar. Like, you're like, okay, he had all the power, but he also had all the money. So it's like, why not go for both? And also that
because Colombia couldn't disappear.
I mean, yeah, Colombia can't disappear, but Pablo Escobar could, and I don't.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. It's like,
but he also escaped. He disappeared to places that could be found and could be targeted. He could be targeted. My point is, if Xavier has a magical island that feeds, protects, provides for all inhabitants on it, and can instantaneously teleport whenever he needs it to, why even come to humanity saying leave us alone when you don't have to do any of that? It just
swagger.
What's up?
Swagger.
Well, that's my point about the cudgel for billionaire or money in general.
I would the counter argument to me is Genosha. Genosha was that for mutants in the early 2000s, and then a giant sentinel killed 16 million of them.
But I thought Genosha was like Australia, wasn't it? Like
where's the actual location of Genosha? I don't
no,
remember.
I meant as far as a prison turned island turned.
Yeah, it was an island that Magneto basically took over.
Right, but it started off as a prison, right?
Anti-mutant. It had started off as just apartheid, parallel anti-mutant country.
Yeah. But then over time it evolved, and there's also Utopia, which was Satellite M brought down to Earth and turned into an island, which also became another target.
Mm-hmm.
And in all those iterations, they always had power, but they never had money. So maybe he's like, all right, let's try this tactic. Maybe that's the crux of this, so part of the story too in this current iteration of X-Men is like, you're learning from all your past mistakes of going through, like, seeing, okay, we failed this way. Let's try it this way. And they hadn't tried the money totem yet. So they're like, okay, let's back it with that too, because apparently just being the biggest, baddest mother effer in the room wasn't enough. They still came at us and still found ways to hurt us. So let's try the money aspect. Here's $1. Leave me alone.
But that's what I'm saying. They as far as, and again, I could be misreading this entire situation, and you guys come at me, the listeners can come at me if I am. But the idea was that he was selling cures to humans, right? That was the idea. So they aren't necessarily doing anything with the money. Like, they're not buying arms to protect them. They have an island to do that.
They're buying influence.
Right. It's
influence into what though?
Into the world? Like, people, I mean, that's what
their magical island puts, like, null and voids any interactions with regular people because they're no longer part of a regular part of the world. I mean, like, if they had to live on Earth, then you buy, or let's make it even localized. If they had to live in California, they were all living in California, which is part of the United States, part of the global world and economy, and they're buying influence to make laws so that they could live easy amongst other people. That makes sense. So if they're, saying, oh, we will buy off the politicians to make laws that are pro mutant so that we can live amongst humans without any threat of violence or retaliation or any of that stuff, because it's a lot like there are consequences and actions to all of this. We're buying that. When you don't have to be a part of California or even anything that happens on the world, your money means nothing.
But it does, because what it means, and I think Ken, you hit it on the head, that they are using that money to kind of integrate themselves into the world economy, into the global market. And by doing so, they become a piece you can't take out. If you are just a separate entity and say, piss off, we don't want to hear from any of you, you're a pretty easy target because your destruction doesn't do anything to everyone else. Whereas if the entire world economy hinges on this drug trade, and you now have used that to purchase basically everything else, so that if you fall, everything else falls with you. The entire global market falls to pieces. Now everyone is invested in your survival. Now they may still try to take you down on the edges or try and move you out of that position, but they can't come at you head on like that.
But I guess my specific question is, then what are they doing with the money? Like, what are they, aside from the fact that the medicine that they're producing, which is arguably like their most valuable asset, which, eventually could be reverse engineered or at least made at a much cheaper cost. What are they doing with the money other than just collecting it from humans?
They're likely just hoarding it, and then depending on, if they've brought, the question too is, they haven't brought all the mutants to that island, because there's still new mutants being born and so forth. So they could be funding, maybe not necessarily like an embassy, but as shelters to help mutants within the world. Yeah. They could be doing this type of stuff. I don't think they focused on that at all in the story, because they've got to go out and fight other people. So that's where the comics are going to go. But there could be other opportunities that Professor X and the rest of the I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think. Do they have a name, like a cabal? What's their leadership?
Oh God, why am I blanking on this right now?
The cabal is something different.
Quiet Council. Quiet Council.
There you go. Thank you. The Quiet Council would just be like, well, we can, to a certain degree, probably just hoarding it, because there's like, well, that's what you do when you get that powerful. You just sit there and hoard money. But I would imagine there's probably some fraction that is like, oh, let's also invest this into our shell corporations that would then set up smaller satellite, hopefully satellite, not entrepreneurial, but satellite
mutant shelters.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what they're doing, at least from what we've seen in the comics. They are literally playing the game that humanity invented. They're saying, oh, this is they said, okay, so everything you guys do is based on who has the best financial standing. We have tried, trying to be peaceful. We have tried trying to be peaceful. We have tried trying to fight back. So what if we just try to dominate you in a language you understand financially?
Well, and again, if I had to make a correlation, we'll call mutants the apples of the world. But there is one more thing. Because Apple is essentially hoarding $230 billion. They just have that amount liquid on them. If you were to get rid of Apple, aside from the technology they provide, software services, what do you think happens to that money? Because what I'm trying to get to is that money to us has always been a valued concept, but it's still just a concept.
So why doesn't someone blow up the US?
Because it's mutually assured destruction. Like,
yeah, anyone
unless they can blow up the entire US in one hit, it's coming back to them. That's the risk of force, which is not something that is happening to Xavier and his group. They're just hoarding money. You're asking, why doesn't someone blow up Apple?
because I need the iPhone 13. That's why you don't blow up. How dare you? This is you know how much these things cost? I need this.
And that's it.
Yeah.
I need the drug that extends my life 5 years.
Right,
I need the drug that gets rid of all mental illness.
But you guys keep forgetting that like Samsung's out there offering you the drug that gives you a year and a half more of life. Not the 5 years.
Samsung's
that's
garbage.
bullshit. That's why would have why no.
But I'm saying if Apple posed a threat saying if they got even more locked down to their platform, saying you can't read comics on our platform. We think it's a waste of time. You can't listen to anything but the Beatles and U2 because that's the music we like listening to. Like if they became that stringent with their rules, as Xavier set forth as his like declaration of mutant independence, and you see that as a threat, you have two options. You can blow up Apple or you can go to Samsung. My question is,
why are those the only two options? Is to one, destroy the company altogether, or just walk away? Like there's no middle ground. Like, oh well, I still use my Apple Watch, but I also use the Samsung phone because it has better podcasting capabilities. Because
my analogy is that they're becoming increasingly threatening with their platform. So eventually that spreads onto their Apple Watch. They lock it from, hey, we don't want you using it outside of your house. We don't want you using it outside of our selected gyms. So whenever you walk out of LA Fitness, it just shuts off. They become this sort of controlling. And again, I'm making this analogous to what Xavier kind of came and said, like, we're going to offer you these things, but under these strict guidelines.
But the strict guidelines are basically, we're going to offer to you at a small profit. You just have to recognize we're a sovereign nation. Yeah. His guidelines were like, and if there's a mutant in your home, you must bow to them at all times. Give them all of your most succulent meats and cheeses. And then your best clothing, and then you will leave the home and it is there. They're not doing that. They're literally saying like, yes, you have to recognize mutant sovereignty and you have to, that's basically it. Recognize mutant sovereignty. All right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm good. I'm like all the succulent meats. My brain is still there. I'm just like,
I just feel like if you're going to do that, the first thing you ask for is the most succulent of meats that they provide.
And cheeses.
And of course. Yeah.
But I think again, and then you totally got me there, Pat. You're right on that aspect. I think my point is that why would humans want to become dependent solely on Apple is my point. When you could have a Samsung sitting in the wings, or what is it, Pixel or Xiaomi, whatever the other, or Windows or something like that. You have options. That's the whole point of freedom of choice, so to speak.
I mean, we have the freedom of choice, and we've willingly given it over to our God's Apple. So it's like your question is why.
Some of us have.
Hey, you know what? I for one welcome our new Apple overlords, but. So that's not how they're not saying like, oh, we're the only game in town now. You can't buy a non.
Well, that's exactly what he said about the insulin and he's saying like they have the patents on it. Like not that they have the patents. You literally cannot grow the flowers and plants that make them outside of on Krakoa or where Krakoa has been seeded, I guess. Mm-hmm.
Right, but you don't have to take the drugs. You can choose to go use the $100 Pharma Bro insulin, or you can use the $10 version of it, of Xavier's insulin. So there's no force here. There's not like you have to use our insulin. It's here's a better alternative. Aren't we awesome? Leave us the fuck alone. And that's the it's not saying like, oh, by the way, we've wiped out every other option for insulin. You're screwed. Best of luck. Yeah. Here's some AirPods. Like, no, it's you have choice still. They're not taking that part away. You can just use the better option of like a natural based insulin that doesn't cost you $100.
But we don't know that it doesn't cost him $100. That's the whole point. Is that he's selling it back to the government.
Well, and that's the thing. The ingenious thing that they are doing is they announce to the world, we have these drugs. If you recognize mutant sovereignty, here you go. You just whatever the fee is, here, take it and enjoy. But it's a low fee. It then is incumbent on the governments around the world to accept that. And if they don't,
But we
they're
don't
the
know what the
bad
fee
guys.
is. We're assuming it's low.
I mean, that's the. I tell you what, it has to be low enough. Otherwise, it wouldn't be financially feasible for them to want to switch.
Well, I mean,
Because
if it does what it says it does, then that's your impetus on trying to secure it, regardless of the
Right.
price. So if someone came up to you and said, "I have the cure for cancer, and it's going to be $1 million per dose," that's just what the fee is. Like, if you want to survive cancer, you're going to find a way to finance $1 million.
True. Well, that's if that's what I mean. The drugs. I mean, again, I've got to go back to the issues, I guess, and be like, what did they say these life altering drugs were? We're using insulin as kind of just the explanation here, but essentially, it's saying like, if it was more than the alternative was cost wise, then they would just stick with the alternative. Like if they like it's a $50 shot as opposed to 100.
It's not. That's what I'm saying. You're saying if it's equal to the alternative. If this, I think part of your argument a minute ago was that if it's better,
It's
then you get to set the price.
I was even if he's just making the same exact insulin
But
and
it's
he's
not.
giving it to you for half the price. I'm saying if he's
but-
giving the same exact insulin and it's half the price, their impetus to switch over would be like it's cheaper.
Yeah, but what he's doing, he's saying, I'm giving you insulin that will cure you, not just be cheaper for you to continue using. It's once you use it the one time, you won't need it again.
Yeah.
So
he gets to set the price for that. And I don't think he's going to be, let's give it for cheap, because then their power runs out when everyone's cured of whatever, when everyone's cured of diabetes.
But that's because you're coming to it from the idea of the capitalist idea of like, we don't want to cure cancer because that's a one-time cure. We want to keep charging them for cancer radiation treatment. That's already the American model. Who's to say that he's looking to be like, well, if we give you the cure, then we have to charge you later for something else. Like,
well, if you charge high enough, my point is that if you make it accessible, eventually it dilutes your power. Like, if everyone's cured of diabetes, why do we need to keep coming to you? We don't need to recognize you as a sovereign nation anymore. Once everyone's cured, we're going to blow you the hell up.
I mean,
so let me tell you what the 3 drugs are, because that may help. Sorry to jump in, but
no, it's good.
With your facts. Nobody needs your facts. You put your Wikipedias away.
Drug L, when taken in pill form, extends humans' lives by 5 years. So it's basically a life extension drug.
Yeah, that's not going to be cheap.
Drug I is a universal antibiotic. An adaptive universal antibiotic. It is
the cure for everything.
Basically,
the cure for infection.
Better, yeah, a cure, at least one. Yeah. And then drug M is the one that can cure all diseases of the mind in humans.
So
Alzheimer's.
And this is all in one dose? Is that also
these are 3 separate drugs?
But there's no speak to the amount of dosage that it's required, because for drug M, the mind one, it cures the mind for a month, it doesn't cure it for a year. That's not specified.
It is not specified. I don't think we have that information. It is. You can infer that it is a one-time use to cure whatever ails you at that point. But once again, it is a superhero comic. They can only go so deeply into this backroom economic dealings before they, as Ken pointed out, they have to go punch something.
Yeah. And as far as, the infection one does work is like, any type, you've replaced every other antibiotic at that point, although it is internal. So there's not a topical option, so that doesn't replace those if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, but aren't antibodies passed genetically anyway, though?
Antibiotics?
Antibodies.
But it's not an antibody. It's an antibiotic.
It's antibiotic. It's amoxicillin.
Yeah, it's a Z-Pack. It's it's like, you've got an infected tooth because it broke in XYZ. Take this, it'll cure the infection, but hypothetically, you still need to get the tooth removed. Like if it's something like that, or if that's the type of like that's my first thing that comes to mind. I'm trying to think of other times. I guess STDs. Some STDs
are. There we go. Get out of here, gonorrhea.
And since the X-Men are now bringing us thruples, maybe that's something that they've thought about. Like, hey,
Well,
let's
I
just
mean,
be safe.
that's because Cyclops is riddled with syphilis. They had to get
All right,
rid of that.
time out. Of the people in that throuple, it is definitely Wolverine.
No, he's got his own antibodies, which are different from antibiotics.
Oh, shit, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
right,
it is Cyclops.
It's Cyclops.
You got the raw end of that deal again.
Well, he ain't whistling Dixie.
He ain't whistling anything.
Oh
It's
my
an itching,
goodness.
burning sensation.
But then again, I guess they're not getting anything from Wolverine either, though. So like, that's the trade. Like, oh.
So Jean Grey's just bringing stuff in. I swear,
Like-
guys, it's only you two.
I didn't even know.
That's
I bet you know what it was. I bet you guys accidentally slept with Madeline Pryor again. That's what did it. It definitely wasn't me.
Did she just implant that in their heads?
Yes. And then she outs like 3 more closeted mutants and goes home. Jean Grey's a bad person. This is totally off topic, but Jean Grey is not a good person. Just going to throw that out.
Because she
there.
gave your boy syphilis.
Yes.
the gift that keeps on giving.
Well, I mean, okay. Well, we've discussed Xavier and his billions. And again, I think we're going to keep coming back to the reason why money just is such a weak cudgel for comics in general, because we get into conversations like this that I don't think writers either care about or spend the time to elaborate on, but
Or have the time to elaborate on.
or have the time to elaborate on. Yeah, you're
Because
right.
really, I mean, it's like it's suddenly you're talking. It's the intergalactic politics of Star Wars, where you're like, do I care about this? Like, I want to see the lightsaber sword stuff. Why are you telling me like this is how democracy dies? I'm sorry about that.
Thunderous applause.
But like, you're like, no, I'm here for the lightsaber battles and the blaster fire. Can we get back to that? I don't need to know about the 3 specific drugs and if they heal you. Also, it adds 5 years. How does that work? It's like, oh well, if you get hit by a bus, like, well, I was about to die, but technically speaking, I'm going to get back up because I was supposed to die tomorrow, but I
No.
have another 5 years.
You're not going to get back up.
Yeah.
You're just going
Right.
to live on the floor for 5 more years.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's this whole like, oh, extend your life by 5 years. How are you basing these numbers off of? Those are the questions I want to know. Like,
I wonder if it's an average.
but also, can I take 2 pills and then it extends my life by 10 years?
I don't think this
It's
is
a
like
really good. The 5-year pill is the one. Like, what do you? The other 2, like, okay, I see.
I don't think it's like a
The
Mario
5-year pill
mushroom
is,
where you just keep taking them after 5 years.
What?
But
Wait.
what if it is?
I don't know about the Mario mushroom because you can't take 2 Mario mushrooms and grow up twice, so that doesn't count. So see, you're comparing apples and mushrooms.
But no, well, technically you can't. You can grow. Well, you can't grow the same size, but you can grow bigger, right? You can go from 1 size to like 3 sizes in Mario's size.
No, just you go from either little Mario to. I mean, we're talking about just you go from
Okay.
like little Mario to like adult size Mario, and then back down. But you can't like take a second mushroom and then get bigger.
Fair
In
enough.
the most recent Mario game, they ported over from the Wii U to
Okay.
the Switch. There is an even bigger mushroom that makes you ginormous.
Ah,
So finally, they've broken it.
but it's not. They don't. It's not like this. You don't just take 2 mushrooms at the same time. It's a different mushroom.
That is true.
Okay.
Fucking Xavier and his crazy mushroom medicine.
I'm also curious about like the antibiotics is a good one. I mean that's fine. The pill that helps mental health, drug M, that one's like okay. Well, but again, how long is that for? It's like I've got a month. Also, that could be a real kick in the pants of like, oh, finally after all these, I've had 15 years of this problem. You take it. I can finally think clearly. Oh, it's running out. Give me another pill. Oh, they're all gone. No, back to that pain and anguish of just being a crazy person.
Well, this is why you respect mutants.
Exactly. I mean, I'm crazy now, so I don't know not to. So is that on me?
It's on Xavier then.
Okay, yeah. So because you took away my pill to respect him.
Well, I mean, as much as we say like you want to get to the explosions and the mutant powers, I also think that you could build in espionage and you can build an action into this explanation though, like how this it may have been a violent start for him to get where he's at right now.
I think that is a fair point. You can build that into the story. One of the hard parts though is that most writers don't have a long tenure on comics.
Fair enough.
So you do have you've got to get to the story that you want to tell and tell it within depending on your deal, 2 years you have to write that book, which is 12 issues. And depending on if you're doing multiple books, you only have a finite amount of time. Like even Ed Brubaker, who we talked about personally, of who helped create the Winter Soldier. Like, he didn't create Bucky, but he created the Winter Soldier, and he had I'm trying to think back, like 3 years. He had a good long run on that, and he was able to lay groundwork and then develop those seeds farther down the line. Whereas, like, you have another writer come in who's like, he's there for a year, so he's like, this is my whiz bang boom issues, like, just that's all you're gonna get, and that's an entire year of storytelling. And but that's only 12 issues, and so that's 2 trades.
Well, then I guess my next question is, and maybe we can move on to the next billionaire with this question, is why even introduce the concept of money if it really doesn't, if it barely moves the plot along in any coherent way? Like, why does it matter that Tony is a billionaire?
It's Tony we're talking about? Okay.
No. Well, I mean, who's our next billionaire? I'll let you guys pick.
Yeah, Kenny Rolls, you're up.
Oh, okay. Oh God, I don't even know who.
We got Norman Osborn. We have Syphilis, Emma Frost. We have.
How
Reed
dare
Richards.
you?
We know she's got something.
She took pill L, or
fair enough.
Whichever one it was.
ML. We got Black Bolt, who hoards his millions on the moon. We got Neymar, where we can start talking about international and I guess aquatic trade. T'Challa. Those are just the Marvel ones. I mean, if you want to jump back over to DC, we can talk about Maxwell Lord, and in his relation to the crappy Wonder Woman movie, Blue Beetle, which nobody wants to talk about. We can talk about Green Arrow, who's the blonde Batman.
He was, yeah. I mean, yeah,
We could talk about Black Adam and his, Syrian money, I'm assuming, or Lex Luthor. I mean, that's a pretty big one. Or we can talk about Batman himself.
Or Doom.
Well, I'm hard pressed. Like, the one that I thought of, the one that like intrigues me the most, of course, is going to be Nightwing because of who I am.
Yeah, let's talk about
But
Nightwing.
then also we've got 3 issues of that story. It hasn't gone anywhere.
Okay.
And we haven't got a chance to really develop him as a billionaire, having the means way outside that of just him in previous iterations.
So do you want to talk about Bruce going into Nightwing then?
I mean, we're on episode 1. I think Bruce is definitely his own standalone episode.
Yeah,
we need to give him some room to breathe.
Fair enough.